Welcome to Monday Motivation, PowerPoints for Successful Christian Living. We're glad you're here. This is the June 29th edition, and I'm sharing with you this week one of my talks. I've given it at my Toastmasters group, I've given it other places, and it's called The Rat. And I'm going to do it in two sections, part one, part two. So today is part one of The Rat. And actually I have a rat here, Squeaky, and this was given to me by one of my Toastmaster friends, and I like it because it reminds me of the rat. So, getting into my talk, here we go. Have you seen the rat? I have. It lived in my house. It was big, fat, ugly, hairy, but the rat lived in my house. And I tolerated that rat for a period of time. I put up with it. And finally, I said, I've had enough. I've had enough of the rat. I don't want it in my house anymore. So I went to the local hardware store, bought some rat poison, opened up the poison, and I ate it. Now, okay, I know what you're thinking. You're crazy. Why would you eat the rat poison to kill the rat? Obviously, that doesn't work. Are you okay? What's wrong with you? Okay, but the reality is many of you, and myself included, have done that exact same thing. Because you see, in this story, the rat is when we have been offended, when we've been hurt, when we've been a victim of something. And sure enough, if you live on this planet, people have hurt you in some way or another. And the poison is when we take offense, when we hold a grudge, or when we harbor unforgiveness towards that. That is the poison. And by taking that poison, you're not hurting the rat, you're not solving the problem, you're only hurting yourself. Now, how do I know this? Let me share my story. And this is actually a very personal story. It's one I don't share too often, but it is emotional, it's personal, because it's my story, it's my life, it's part of who I am today. And I want to share it with you this week, my story. And then next week, I'll share with you more of what I learned from the experience. You see, in my home, we grew up a typical middle-class family in Pickering. I had one brother, mom, dad, just your typical middle-class family living in a 3-bedroom house. And on the outside, we looked normal. But on the inside, our family was dysfunctional. And as a young child, I knew there were problems, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But as I started to grow a little bit older, I could see my father, he struggled with alcohol for quite a few years. And that affected his ability to lead the family. And as it got worse, that means that our role model, our parent, the person that we expect to be there to protect us, is not functioning in that role because of his dependency on alcohol. And that had a huge impact on our family and on myself growing up. I know lots of kids grow up in more difficult situations, but parents, your kids need you. As a child, I needed my dad to be there, and even though he was physically there, he was not filling that role. And that had a huge impact on me and my brother, and just how our family functioned. Moving on into my teen years, okay, now picture me, it's your typical 13-year-old boy, full of testosterone, thinks he's the man, and what do men do? Men fix problems. We fix things. So here I am, 13 years old, thinking that I'm going to solve this. But the more I tried to fix the problem, the more we argued, the more we fought. And that created a distance between my dad and I, and any time that we were together, we were most likely fighting. It did not help. I remember, and as that continued, I would become more angry and bitter at what he was taking from our family. And that bitterness continued to grow. The resentment continued to grow. One night, I remember I just was so angry and so mad, I told him he should leave. And I tackled him and I pinned him against the door. Now, let's think this through. I'm 13 years old. I'm not even 100 pounds yet. I was very scrawny. And I have this 170-pound man pinned against the door, and I'm suggesting he leave. Well, one, he can't leave because he can't open the door even if he wanted to. And two, my life is about to end. So the only thing that saved my life that day was the fact that he was so shocked that I would do that. I was in shock too. And I could run fast. You never saw me run so fast in my life. That's what saved me. God's grace and my fast running saved me that day. But things just continued to spiral from there. We had good times, but they were the rare exception. And through all of this, I saw I have a right to be angry. I have a right to be bitter. What you're doing to our family is wrong. What I'm seeing is not right. The way you treat your family is wrong. So I have a right to be bitter. I have a right to be angry, and I was exercising that right. I wanted justice. But justice did not seem to come. At 19, I moved out of the house. I was gone. I'm out of here. I took a few of my belongings, and I left, and I got my own apartment. And I'm thinking, fresh start, everything's new, I am ready to make it. Put my past behind me, and let's move on. And I tried. I got a job. I was happy with my job. I was happy with my apartment. But at night, the bitterness continued to go over and over in my mind. The anger, the memories of what had happened in our house and the things that went on just continued to eat away at me, especially at night when I'm home alone or trying to sleep, just eating away. And that bitterness, the poison wasn't killing the rat. The poison was slowly eating away at me and killing me. That bitterness, that resentment, that unforgiveness. So I'm trying to figure out, why am I still bitter and angry? The rat's gone. The source of my problem, the cause of my anger and bitterness is gone. But the problem is, the unforgiveness, it was still in my head. I needed to let it go. Now, if you are still in a situation where you're being victimized, one of our past webcasts talks about being a victim. Don't continue to be a victim. Forgiveness does not mean you continue to be a victim. But I realized I needed to forgive. Even in the Bible, it says, if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you. Oh man. Talk about feeling under judgment. I found it so hard to forgive. And we talk about forgive and forget. You know what? I'm glad that doesn't happen. We can't just, it's not like Men in Black where wipe it from your memory. Because I have good memories of my dad. But you can't just forget about it. That's not the way we're wired. So I had to make a conscious choice to forgive. Now, did I say, okay, I choose to forgive you and that's it? No. Deep wounds take a long time to heal. If I get a scrape on my arm, I'll go to the washroom and I'll wash that scrape off and forget about it. It's done. Same if you have been offended or hurt. Sometimes it's just small, insignificant things. Wash it off, move on. But when hurt and pain goes very deep over a long period of time, it takes a long time to forgive. It's a process that you have to work through. And time and time again, it would come up. And as soon as I felt those thoughts of anger and bitterness coming up, no, I chose to forgive. And I pray. Go for a few more days, a few more weeks. Thoughts come up again. No, I am going to forgive. It is a conscious choice. And every time it would come up, I would continue to pray, Lord, I forgive. Lord, I forgive. So that's my challenge to you. If you find it easy to forgive, that is awesome. My hat's off to you. But if you're like me, if you're like most of the people, I think of it like a piece of gum, a piece of stale gum. You chew it for a bit, put it out, and then you come back and you chew it a bit more, say, ooh, this gum is terrible, spit it out, come back and chew it a bit more. And we keep coming back to it. But It's a process. And each time you let a bit more of that hurt go. You leave it with the Lord. You say, Lord, I forgive. You forgave me. I forgive whoever it is. So if you find forgiveness easy, that's great. But many of us, it's a process you have to go through over time when it's the deep hurts. And if you have friends, you can help them through that process if you're somebody who finds it easy. But we have to forgive. Often we want justice. The Lord will take care of that. Now, I'm happy to say that in my case, the story has a good ending. I'll share that with you in part 2 next week. And I'm also going to share next week 5 different things that I learned through this process. So make sure you join us next week. But my challenge to you, what's happened in your life? Is there any unforgiveness that you're hanging on to? If so, take it to the Lord. Pray, Lord, I need to forgive this person. And then through a conscious act, say, I am not going to carry this any longer. I'm going to let it go. Not because the poison is killing the rat. It's because that poison is killing you. Do it for yourself. Let it go. Forgiveness is so important. I see social media posts, and so many of it is rooted in anger and unforgiveness that one person has towards another or one group of people have towards another. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to let things go, to move on in that unforgiveness. We can't hold grudges. The rat's not the problem. It's the poison that we're eating. Let it go. Make sure you subscribe to our mail list. That way you'll get notification of next week's webcast. I'll share how the story ends with my dad, and that's a good ending. And 5 key points that I learned from this in the process of forgiveness. So, hope you enjoyed this story. It is a personal story, and I know your story is different, but whatever it is, leave it with the Lord. Let that forgiveness take place. Don't harbor resentment and bitterness. It's the poison that eats away at you. Have a great week. If you want to talk about this, use our feedback form on our website. We'll see you next week on Monday Motivation. Have a great week.